Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 229 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How about you, man?
I'm doing great. All right, we got our shout-outs to give. We had, for Patreon, Jeff Bradford.
Hey, Jeff.
Nate Sanders.
What's going on, Nate?
Kiki.
Hey, Kiki.
Little Tony.
Little Tony's probably Big Tony.
Melanie Schneider.
Hey, Melanie.
Melanie.
Melanie again.
Martin Logan.
Hey, Martin.
Matthew Johns.
What's going on, Matthew?
Melanie Priest.
And three Melanies can't be wrong.
I know. Nicole Lilico.
What's up, Lilico?
Paul Conrad.
Hey, Paul.
Tizzy.
What's up, Tizzy?
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Courtney Jensen.
What's up, Courtney?
Leah Sampson.
Hey, thank you, Leah.
Lexi.
Hi, Lexi.
Kirsty Finnegan.
What's going on, Finnegan?
Corey Fisk.
Hey, Corey.
And Judith.
Good old Judith.
So that's a lot of great new Patreon support. If we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Lil Winchester.
What's up, Lil?
So thank you for that continued support, and to everyone who continues to support us on Patreon. For PayPal, we had Pauline Timms.
Hey, Pauline.
Robert Pearson.
What's up, Robert?
Kelly Baker.
Thank you, Kelly.
And Victoria Rodriguez.
Well, it's awesome, Victoria.
Yeah, great support all the way around. I'll throw in a quick CrimeCon plug, right? If you're going, go to crimecon.com, use our promo code TCAT, get 10% off your standard badge price. So Gibbs, we actually recorded this episode last week, planned to put it out last Sunday. That didn't happen. We switched companies that we work with on Unsolved, and things didn't go as planned, so we weren't able to.
Things happen.
Things do happen. You know, we put it out on TCAT, but not everybody listens to TCAT. So right. I know there were some people that were wondering where the episode was, and I tried to respond to as many people as I could. So, but here it is. We're putting it out now.
Now you're going to enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so listen up.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We have what I think people are going to find is a very fascinating case. In this episode, we're talking about the Watcher of Westfield. So when the Broaddus family of five purchased their dream home in upscale Westfield, New Jersey in July 2014, they were unaware that it already had a tenant of sorts. Gibbs, there was an individual calling themselves the Watcher who began communicating with the family through a series of letters that became progressively more disturbing as the details contained within their letters indicated that they were indeed watching them.
A little creepy.
I would say very creepy. But this was a family who really wanted this home. So they set about hiring experts in a number of different disciplines. The problem is the Broadduses were unable to flush out their creepy stalker. No one could figure out this person's identity or even determine whether the threats alluded to in the letters were credible. The community of online armchair detectives would pose a number of theories about this case, but even with a possible recent break in the case, it remains unsolved. And we're going to talk about a lot of these theories later on. I think one of the things that people find so compelling about this case, Gibbs, is that the Broadduses were never able to realize their dream, never able to move into their dream home at 657 Boulevard. They didn't want to put their children at risk, so they never moved in. And that's something I completely understand. You have someone writing very creepy letters. I would even say ominous, right? I'd use that word.
Sure.
You've got kids. Do you want to take a chance? You've hired a bunch of people. They couldn't figure out who this person was. You have no idea what's going on in this person's mind, what their motive is, what they're capable of. I just don't see how you can risk it.
Well, let's face it, this whole situation is creepy.
Well, so much so that Hollywood has gotten involved, right? There was a bidding war for the rights to this story, as happens a lot when you have a very compelling, creepy type of story. Go back to Amityville Horror. I mean, I'm not saying that's a perfect comparison, but it is a comparison that you can make.
Sure.
I'm sure there were a number of people that were jumping at the bit to try to buy the rights to that story. I mean, how many books and movies, how many movies have been made? A bunch.
Been a good moneymaker for Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at this creepy and bizarre case. As reported by the AP, Derek and Maria Broaddus, along with their 3 children, were an all-American family. They had thought they purchased their dream home in July of 2014 for $1.3 million. That's a sizable amount of money.
It is.
For a home. I get it, Gibbs. Homes cost different amounts, as you move throughout the country. A $1.3 million home where we live is so much different than a $1.3 million home in California. I mean, do you know what you can buy here for $1.3 million compared to what you get out in California?
That'd be a huge house.
You can buy a frickin' mansion here for that type of money. But this was a very nice home, right? Spacious, 6-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom home at 657 Boulevard in the posh suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. Again, what do they say about real estate? What matters the most?
Location, location, location.
Exactly. The list price was $1.25 million. So I think like a lot of buyers today, and I mean right now, what you're seeing in the real estate market, they had to pay more than the asking price. An article in the Courier News claims that there was a bidding war for the home, and the other buyers were very upset at not getting the house. Okay, I've been in that situation. Not often, but one time I was involved in a bidding war for a house. I did get it. And I know for a fact, because I talked to some of the other folks, they were not happy.
Yeah.
It was one of those situations like best and final. And there was 2 other people involved and they didn't get it.
Well, especially if you're like wanting to be next to your family that has the house next door. Those people get really upset because they really wanted their family. They wanted to be next to their family. Now you outbid them.
Oh, well, that's a whole different element, right? Not only do you want the house, but you want it specifically because it's next to a family member. Yeah. I definitely get that. So this house was in the same neighborhood where Maria enjoyed an idyllic childhood. She wanted that same thing for her 3 children. What they got instead was a nightmare for the family, both financially and emotionally.
Yeah, I get it. When you grow up in a great neighborhood and you have those wonderful memories, you want your children to experience that.
Assuming the neighborhood has not changed.
Exactly.
Because there were some places that I lived as a child that are not quite as idyllic as they were in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
I could agree.
According to several different sites, the house at 657 Boulevard was originally constructed in 1905. And that aligned with some of the time frames in the letters that we'll get into here in a little bit. However, the Westfield Leader, the town paper, claimed that the house was built in 1920. The Broaddus family planned some remodeling before they moved into the home. So, I mean, we already said they paid $1.3 million for this house. And right away, there were some things that they wanted to change before they moved in. I think it gives you a sense of what real estate was like there.
Heck of a fixer-upper.
Yeah, no doubt. They hired a small army of contractors to work on the home almost immediately after they closed on the deal. And it was around that time that the first letter arrived. It arrived the week of May 26, 2014. Derek Broaddus had been at the home to do a little painting, and later that day, he retrieved the mail before he left. Mixed inside all the typical mail was a handwritten envelope with a letter inside. The letter has been described as written in thick ink. Part of the letter stated, 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. And as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the home in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. The letter was signed only as the Watcher.
Creepy.
Okay, Gibbs, if I'm making my daily run out to the mailbox, and of course there's a Burger King coupon and a whole bunch of ads for remodeling my shower, they get those all the time.
Sure.
I open up an envelope, handwritten letter, talking about somebody watching my home, and that this has been passed down from generation to generation. They just sit around watching the home. Okay, that's creepy in and of itself.
Sure.
One of the lines that really jumps out at me is talking about the history, but do you know what lies within the walls of this home? Okay, I got to think at the very least, maybe the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up.
Yeah.
By the time I get done reading this letter, I'm going to be a little bit uneasy, to say the least.
I'll be like, hey, man, I paid $1.3 million to be here. That's why I'm here.
You going to talk that way to the Watcher? I would not advise it.
I want to like write back on the letter, fold it back up, put it back in the envelope.
And just hope that this person comes to retrieve the mail because they're watching you. They see you making a reply.
Yeah.
It's cryptic. It's ominous. It is a little scary just from the standpoint of, number one, somebody's watching. And then, you know, at the end, why are you here? Well, I'm going to find out. Okay. Are they directly threatening you? No. Is it a veiled threat? I would say it is. And again, I would use the word ominous. Letters arrived pretty regularly over the next 5 years. And again, these were creepy letters that alluded to the author having knowledge of the family gained by stalking them. The letters also included some implied threats in regards to the children. Each letter was delivered by the U.S. Postal Service in Kearney, New Jersey, and contained no return address. Okay. Well, if you're a stalker, if you're a watcher, you can't really put your return address on the envelope.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
It does.
Yeah.
My assumption is you're trying to retain your anonymity, and you can't really throw a return address sticker on there.
Well, and you really don't want to be seen placing it in the mailbox either.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? You can't drop these off over a 5-year period and expect that you're never going to be seen. So, you know, mailing them through the post office, the postal service, dropping them in, you know, one of those blue mailboxes is probably what you're going to have to do. I think what's frustrating about this case to many is that the full content of the letters have never been published, and only portions have been made available through media stories written about the case, most notably an article in New York Magazine in 2018. Portions of the letters were also made public during a 2015-2016 lawsuit filed by the Broadduses against John and Andrea Woods, the couple who sold them the house in 2014. Basically, Gibbs, this lawsuit was centered around the Woodses failing to disclose the existence of this stalker.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, does the basement leak? Is there any problems with the roof? Hey, does your chimney work? Oh, and by the way, is there anything I need to know about somebody stalking this house and sending letters?
Do you have a watcher?
Yes.
Which I do not think is on any real estate form.
I've never seen it on a disclosure form.
in any state in the United States.
Right.
According to the Courier News, the Woods responded to the lawsuit by claiming that they only received one letter from the Watcher. They received it a week before closing the deal, and they dismissed it as a harmless prank because nothing really came from it. No other communication was ever received in the 23 years in which they lived in that house, or at least that's what they claimed.
Yeah. So if that's the case, if you've been there 23 years and you never received a letter from the Watcher until the last week you're there, I think you would probably say the same thing, right? Is this some kind of hoax? Some kids playing some games? What's going on here? And guess what? I'm leaving in a week anyway. Yeah. I don't really care.
And would it really be something that you felt like you should disclose to the person buying your home? I don't think I would, because I would think, okay, these people are going to laugh at me.
Right.
If I try to tell them what, showed up in my mailbox, because it's so far-fetched, it's so far out there. They're just going to laugh right in my face.
Yeah.
That's assuming that they never received anything else, right? In the entire 23-year period they were there.
Right.
After receiving the first letter in May 2014, the Broaddus family had the walls checked to see if there was indeed something within, as the letter indicated. But despite hiring a professional firm to peer into the hidden recesses of the walls, nothing was found. Now, what they did found is that some of the walls were not insulated.
Which for $1.3 million, you think they would be.
You would think. All right, so Gibbs, you would think this is good news. Because to me, that was one of the parts of the letter that I think would have really concerned me. Are you telling me there's something living inside these walls?
Right.
I'm disturbed. I want to find out. Okay. Professionals looked into it. There's nothing there. And I think what that did was it led the Broadduses to be inclined to dismiss the letter as a hoax or some type of prank. It was probably somebody trying to prank the new neighbors.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Haha.
I'm the Watcher.
Yeah.
Funny. Not funny. Scary. Ominous. But, when you're in that situation, it's maybe not as scary as what we're making it out to be, because we know everything that's going to happen.
Right.
Or everything that did happen later on. When you just get that first one, is it as scary as we're thinking it is? I'm kind of leaning towards maybe not.
Yeah. Or just laugh it off.
Right. Because we know people play around, right? You just moved in. Some kid down the street thinks it's really funny to kind of write a little creepy note, put it in your mailbox. Haha, I got you. And that'll be the end of it. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case here.
Exactly.
So the Broaddus family continued their plans, right? We're going to remodel. We're going to move in. But then more letters arrived. And the tone of these letters turned darker, a little more sinister. Some of them began mentioning the Broaddus' 3 children.
So that's when you cross the line and doing hoax, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're saying anything remotely sketchy about someone's kids, then everything changes.
Right.
You know, if it's a veiled threat, if it's an implied threat, whatever you want to call it, parents take that stuff very seriously. The June 18th, 2014 letter contained the following. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Okay, to me, that is going beyond some type of veiled threat. You're literally saying you're going to do something to these kids.
Right. The way it reads, the way it's written, has a different flow.
I agree. It's not written conversationally as though you and I would talk to each other, right? When we're just sitting here, or we're sharing a meal or having lunch or whatever it is. I don't want to say it sounds like old timey, but it's got not a Shakespearean tone to it, but it definitely has a different tone. The way the sentences are constructed, the words that are chosen, it's not what most of us are used to.
Not from this era?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it seems like it came from a different era. I would agree with that. Or from a very cheesy 1980s horror movie.
That could be too.
One or the other.
Yeah.
The letters kept arriving, and they started to include a disturbing number of details about the kids, including their birth order, family nicknames. There were also things about the family that really only someone who was watching them would know. There was a mention of an artist's easel that had been set up by the Broaddus' daughter on their deck where she painted when visiting the house. That would have only been visible from the rear of the home.
So somebody's making a lot of effort to stalk these folks.
Yeah, and so, you know, when you think about something like that, that's a different level of scary to me, because now you're not just saying something about the kids, you're saying things that you've either had to have gone out of your way to research or talk to other people to find out, or in the case of this easel, you literally are watching.
Right.
And you're watching my young daughter paint on the deck. That's very scary.
Unacceptable.
Absolutely. The letters also began to include some vague threats, such as the July 18th, 2014 letter, which contained maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. And will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
Okay. This is like over the top.
Yeah, I think you said they crossed the line before. We don't even know where the line is now because they went so far past it.
Yeah. I mean, this person's talking about doing something to my car, maybe burning my house,
killing my pet, and hurting my children. And it was at this point that Derek and Maria decided to postpone their plans of moving into the house with their children. Instead, they stayed with relatives while they figured out how to proceed. They decided that no matter how small the risk, they just couldn't endanger the well-being of their children. And I get it, Gibbs. I mean, you start getting multiple letters like this, you have to be thinking safety.
Sure, yeah.
I'm thinking someone out there is deranged because these letters, in some small part, seem to be coming from a person who maybe is not in control of all their faculties.
Right.
You know, let's talk about the first one, right? I'm the watcher. My grandfather watched the house. My dad watched that. I mean, those that seems to be pretty far out there.
Yeah, we're generations of watchers.
Yeah. Now you're getting into the area of, I might burn the house down. I might kill your pet. I might harm your children.
I'm in control of what could happen to you.
Yeah, at the very least, I'm in control of your fear.
Sure.
Because I'm putting that fear into you. But at a certain point, as a parent, don't you have to make the decision that you can't take that chance?
Oh, I think you have to. You have to say, you know what? Enough is enough. We are not going to continue this charade with this person.
Yeah, you don't know if the threats are real, but they are threats.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you really make that decision on your own of how real they are? And are you willing to take the chance that they're not? Now, Gibbs, one of the things that Derek and Maria did is set up multiple security cameras around the property. I get that. That's a good idea. That makes sense. Because if someone is saying they're watching your property, well, maybe you're going to catch them on one of these cameras.
Yeah, can't hurt.
They also went to the Westfield police with the letters and their concerns. It's been reported that a DNA test on one of the envelopes that had been licked shut contained saliva that belonged to a woman, but that person was not Maria Broaddus and has never been identified to this day. A search for fingerprints on the envelopes and letters yielded nothing of value. So again, we talked about setting up the security cameras. I think that's a great idea. An even better idea is taking those letters to police and saying, look, someone's threatening us. They're threatening our pets. They're threatening our children, our property. Help us out.
Exactly. What are you going to do about this?
And they went pretty far. I mean, you're talking about DNA tests being performed on the envelopes, dusting for fingerprints. And I think why it's important to talk about the fact that the DNA excluded Maria is because I feel like you almost have to do that. We're probably going to get into it, but, you know, was this real? Was this a hoax? Were the Broadduses involved in it? Okay. Well, so far, the DNA says that a woman licked the envelope, but it wasn't Maria Broaddus. And I think that's very important.
I think it is too.
Now, no fingerprints on the envelopes or letters. That doesn't surprise me. Whoever is doing this, if they've got 1 ounce of knowledge of, you know, even the basics of forensics, they would know.
Right.
You better either be wearing gloves or something, or the police are going to be knocking at your door very quickly. So one of the things that police did was they checked into the folks who lived in that neighborhood. They turned up 2 registered sex offenders. There was a neighbor who had a pretty serious mental illness. There was also a house close to the Broaddus home that had 2 chairs in the garden that were placed very close to the Broaddus' property and pointed to face it. But that was about it. That was the extent of the evidence yielded by the investigation. The Westfield police advised the Broadduses not to discuss the situation with their new neighbors. Because I think at that point, Gibbs, they hadn't ruled anyone out. I think the problem that the police had was, you know, they looked into all these different neighbors. They couldn't find anything, right? They didn't generate any leads. And although the case remains officially open and active, there's really not much to go on for investigators. The police told Derek back then that the case was basically akin to looking for a needle in a haystack. So I think that tells you how little they had to go on. They had nothing.
I think it'd be difficult to get anything on this case anyway. I mean, if you tested the DNA on the letter, nothing. Fingerprints, nothing. What else do you have to go on? You've already knocked on all the doors.
Well, and by knocking on the doors and talking to neighbors, I'm going to make an assumption that they asked people whether they had seen someone watching the home.
Yeah.
We don't have those facts, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption to make. Obviously, they didn't get any information. Or if they did, it's not been released. no composite sketch. So I'm thinking they didn't get anything. According to the 2018 New York Magazine story, Derek and Maria put their renovation plans on hold and they stopped bringing the kids to the house. And all of this was noted by the Watcher, who wrote in a letter, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." It was after this that the Broadduses hired a team of experts in various disciplines to help them discover the identity of their stalker.
Well, I think you have to at this point, because you're saying, look, we've kind of walked away from this house. We're not there, but yet you're still watching it. And you're sending us letters asking us, where are we? What happened? Why aren't you in the house? It's freaky.
Can't really argue with the decision of stopping the practice of bringing the kids to the home. Can't argue with that one at all. So, Gibbs, when we talk about this team of experts, one member was an ex-FBI agent who served with Derek on the local school board of trustees. Another was former FBI agent Robert Linehan, who performed a threat assessment on the letters. His analysis of the letters indicated that the individual was likely older, based on the vocabulary used and the writer's habit of double spacing after a period. Okay, I get that. You and I already talked about kind of the sentence structure, the words used. We mentioned that it sounded a little older.
Right.
So I think just based on that, you could probably, make the assumption that the writer is most likely older. This was not written by a millennial. I think most people would look at these letters and come to that conclusion. Also, Gibbs, I don't know how many people nowadays double space after a period.
Pretty rare.
It might be. I don't know. I don't know if that's a generational thing, if that's been kind of lost over time, if younger people don't do that. I really don't know. But obviously, it must have some bearing on it because this Robert Linehan is using it in his analysis.
Yeah, I think in a handwritten letter, it wouldn't bug me, but a double space on a typewritten letter bugs me. When I see that on a letter that's been typed out, for whatever reason, it really gets to me.
I think, Gibbs, it has something to do with the rules of typewriters. For some reason, when I took typing way back in the day, I think you were supposed to space twice after a period. I don't know. I'll have to look it up after we do the episode, but I think it might have something to do with that. So there again, who uses typewriters anymore, or who is even familiar with the rules of using a typewriter? You got to be of a certain age.
Sure. Yeah, you'd have to be.
My kids have never used a typewriter in their life.
They would probably look at it very strange. What's that, Dad? Never seen that.
But as to the actual threat that the letters posed to the family, Linehan could not say. Because while the letters were not overtly threatening, the erratic thinking contained in the letters did suggest a level of unpredictability. Linehan gave his opinion that former housekeepers or their offspring should be regarded as possible persons of interest. So a couple of things here for me to break down. He's saying that the letters were not overtly threatening. I think we have to really kind of think about what the word overtly means.
Sure.
I kind of took them to be pretty threatening, some of them.
So
the blood of your children, and once I figure out their names, I'm going to call them to me, and things like that. I took to be very threatening. Now, I do think this kind of former housekeeper offspring angle is interesting because it really could tie in with generations of people looking over or watching over the house.
Sure, yeah.
I think if you go back in history, a lot of times people who worked as housekeepers and things like that, some of their children took over for them. They kind of stayed with the same family for many, many years.
So they were always the watcher of that home.
Could be.
Yeah.
I think it's something to think about. Derek and Maria hired a security firm to search for handwriting matches, but none were found. Again, that would be pretty tough. I would think, to me, that would almost be the definition of a needle in the haystack.
I think it would be, like you said, almost impossible.
I mean, they showed the handwriting to neighbors in hopes that someone would recognize the author, but no one did. So I'll say this, if police showed up right now and showed me a sample of your handwriting and asked me if I knew whose it was, I would have no idea it was yours.
No.
I have no idea what your handwriting looks like.
I wouldn't even be able to tell you what my handwriting looks like.
Okay, that's strange because I can tell you what mine looks like. But you and I worked together for so many years. How much of our communication was digitally?
Well, that's true.
Through email.
Yeah.
Almost all of it. Or, you know, if there was a form to be filled out, usually it was printed.
Right.
So, again.
I mean, back in that day, you did all the signing anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, I'm picturing them walking around with examples of handwriting to neighbors and saying, do you recognize this handwriting?
Yeah, that's going to be like, are you kidding me? No,
Yeah.
I mean.
So strange.
I mean, I guess you could hope for that 1 in 1,000 people that someone would be like, oh, that's Helen's. Oh, Helen's down at 659.
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't try things like that.
Right.
You could hit, and what do you have to lose? I don't think there's a negative in it.
Right.
I'm just saying the chances of somebody recognizing it seems so small. You know, they even had a forensic linguist who searched online forums looking for language patterns similar to the ones used in the letters.
That seems like a difficult task.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult, but I kind of think you might have a better chance there than you would have with asking people about handwriting. I mean, you only have to go back and look at the Unabomber case. You know, when he sent out that manifesto, a lot of the words that he used were recognized by, I think, his brother, but even maybe more so by his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Cards he had written, letters he had written to them, you know, he had used some similar language.
Now that I think you could recognize from me.
Yeah, I think that's easier to recognize in people. We all have a certain way of writing. But I think the bottom line, Gibbs, is they're going through exhaustive efforts, right, to figure out who this person is. But they learn nothing about the identity of their stalker. And this is not the only mystery surrounding this 657 Boulevard address. That address has a pretty mysterious history. It has sold multiple times for $1. It was only the sale by the Woods to the Broaddus family where the home sold for more than $1. So I think we have to break down the ownership of this home beginning in 1905, the year that the home was built. In 1913, William Davies purchased the property for $1. He later became Westfield's mayor. Davies sold the home in 1947 to his son and daughter-in-law for $1. Now, that's not really unusual when you're talking about real estate transactions among family members.
Yeah, you're trying to avoid paying some taxes on the sale.
But then the son turned around and sold the home to Dillard and Mary Bird in 1951, again for just $1. And from my understanding, Gibbs, there's no evidence that the Davies were related to the Birds in any way. So I'm seeing that as very odd.
It is odd.
But then later on, the Birds sold the home to a family by the name of the Schaefers in 1953 for $1. Now, the Westfield Leader says that Schaefer paid $23,000, but some other sources say $1. The Schaefers turned right around and sold the home to the Bakes family in 1955 for, you guessed it, $1.
Yeah.
So I would understand all of this if the home was being handed down from family member to family member. That doesn't seem to be the case here. There's also some very quick turnaround times when it comes to the sale of this home. A year, 2 years.
Well, I mean, from 1947 to 1955, the home sold 4 times, all for $1.
For $1. I think anybody looking at that would think that's very strange.
Yeah.
The Bakes remained in the home until 1990 when the Woods bought it. We couldn't find any information on the price that the Woods paid for the home, but it is known that the Woods retained ownership until 2014 when they sold it to the Broadduses for $1.3 million. So I think you have to ask a number of questions. Why did the home change ownership so quickly, so many times, and for the unbelievable price of $1? I mean, this is not The Price is Right.
No.
Where you get to bid $1, and if you're right, you get it. Doesn't work that way. So that has led many to ask the question, did the previous owners who unloaded the house after just a couple of years for $1 receive similar stalking letters? And was it these letters that caused them to flee the home and sell the home so cheaply?
Yeah, if you believe the Watcher's first letter, where they claim that they have family members that have watched the house in previous years, father or grandfather, maybe it did happen. Maybe these letters have always been out there.
I think what kind of goes against that is the Woods, right? Living there for 23 years. They only received one letter from the Watcher, and it came almost at the very end of the time period in which they lived in this home. Unless, and this is a big unless, they received a lot more letters than they've been willing to talk about.
Yeah. And maybe they're like, you know what? Yeah, they're letters. We're not scared of this person. We'll just put them in this drawer. We'll just pitch the letters in the trash, whatever.
Because if they did, they obviously were not scared into selling it quickly for $1. And they sold it after many years for a large sum of money.
Exactly.
But these are just a few of the unanswered questions about this case. There's been a lot of theories discussed about the identity of the Watcher and his or her intentions, right? We've got to keep in the back of our mind the fact that there was female DNA found on at least one of the envelopes. Some people believe that the Watcher, the writer of the letter, is a neighbor. I think basically due to the content of the letters, many feel that the details could have been gathered by someone living near the home at 657 Boulevard. I get that, right? Somebody could be using binoculars, or they could just be looking outside their window.
Yeah, very easily.
One letter alluded to the Watcher living in a house nearby with the statement, just turn around and look if they wanted to learn his or her identity. In another letter, the individual wrote, "Who am I? Hundreds of cars pass by the house every single day. Maybe I'm in one. Check all the windows that can be seen from 657 Boulevard. Perhaps I am in one." Yet others argue that this freely provided clue is probably a red herring, provided to throw everyone off track.
I think you could go either way with that, right? And that's the mystery of it. Is this somebody that's sitting across the street in one of the homes, peering through their windows? Are they actually driving up and down the boulevard, looking at your home? Or are they not doing any of that and just claiming to be doing that to make you wonder and to throw you off the trail?
Yeah, I think you have to ask the question. Would a stalker, would somebody who is doing what this person is doing give real information that could lead someone to figure out his or her identity? Most people wouldn't. Now, would they throw a red herring out there? Sure. You can go back to the Zodiac, who promised if one of his ciphers were solved, his name would be in there.
Yeah.
Well, the cipher was solved and there was no name. Why would you give your name? That ends the game very quickly.
It does. In this home here, though, I think, wouldn't police just simply look at the letter and say, okay, if this is somebody that might be living across the street or within range, wouldn't we or couldn't we look at the tax records, the ownership records, and can we identify ownership for 110 years on the other homes that have been in the same family name, right? Because the watcher's saying, my grandfather watched this house, my dad watched this house, now I'm watching this house. Well, you think that home where they're watching from has been in their name, family name the whole time.
Yeah, good point. When the Woods placed the home on the market in 2014, it received multiple competing offers that exceeded the asking price. So another theory that has been floated is that the writer could be someone who lost the house in the bidding war and held a grudge. Because of that, Andrea Woods shared with the Broadduses the information she gathered about the other bidders and said that one had health problems that prevented the purchase of the property. Another found a different home to purchase. Neither seemed like an unstable personality, and neither exhibited any unusual behavior.
So that takes that out of the equation.
Sounds like it does. There have also been some suggestions that the Broadduses concocted this whole thing. When they found themselves unable to afford the pricey renovations, they contracted out. And I think this is one that you see quite a bit online, right? It's kind of sad, but the people involved, they're always looked at. And it's why I made special mention of the fact that, her DNA was not found on the letter. Now, does that exclude her? Absolutely not. Somebody else could have licked the envelope and they still could be behind it. They could have paid somebody else to write the letters and mailed them. But I think as we go, Gibbs, the question for me around that is, what would they have to gain? Because as we're going to find out, they're going to lose big time.
Right. So why make up these stories if you just needed to get out? Why not just sell the home? You knew there was a lot of interest when you bid for it.
Sure.
So just put it back on the market and you're probably going to get something close to what you paid for it anyway.
Or at the very least, a heck of a lot more than what we're going to find out they ultimately got for it.
Exactly.
Gibbs, some people have speculated that they couldn't afford the $1.1 million mortgage for the new home, and somehow they thought sending these letters would get them out of that deal. That to me makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Number one, Derek had a well-paying job at the time. So, I'm not sure that they couldn't afford the house, but whether they could or not, to me, is moot. How in the world is sending these letters going to get you out of a real estate deal? If you want it out, you could just resell it. We already talked about the fact that they had a number of competing bidders, and these letters would just put a stigmatism on the house or just make it harder to sell.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding that thought or that theory. I'm not buying into that at all.
Yeah, I don't get that logic.
According to NJ.com, Derek has shared that over the years of owning the house, he was unable to sleep at night. He was on medication, and he found it difficult to cope with the stress of the situation. Maria had to see a therapist. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Their marriage went through a tremendous amount of stress, and it was reported that the couple was on the brink of divorce on more than one occasion.
Hey, that's a stressful event right there. Emotionally, financially, I get it.
Hey, we've talked about it before, man. Marriage is tough on its own. Now you've got a watcher sending you letters, threatening you, your family, your kids, your property. Very stressful. Others have speculated that the watcher is a person who gets his or her kicks by terrorizing people.
I get that. I can see that in his letters.
This could be a person who enjoys the publicity, the news articles generated by all of this going on, because it did, over time, Gibbs, move from a local matter of interest to the national stage.
Yeah, it was on the national news. These stories came out on the national news at one point.
Yeah, that's how you get on the national stage.
Oh.
In the last few years, the Westfield police reopened the case and they decided to investigate it from scratch. And it was during this time they discovered a lead that everyone else had missed. Apparently, the Watcher had targeted another house on the same block as 657 Boulevard. The family who was targeted had lived on that street for many years and had received a letter very similar to the ones received by the Broaddus family. By the Broaddus family, it was sent at the same time the Broadduses received their first letter. Now, the second family thought it was a prank and they threw the letter away. But years later, one of their grown children posted about it on Facebook, and that's how it came to the attention of investigators. All right, so for me, Gibbs, this adds a new wrinkle.
It does. A whole nother layer here.
Given this new information, police conducted a stakeout on that street where they could keep tabs on both houses that had been targeted. One evening, a car parked nearby attracted their attention. They traced the vehicle to a young woman who lived in a nearby town, but had a boyfriend who lived on the same block as the two targeted houses. Apparently, the boyfriend had a keen interest in dark video games. One of them was titled The Watcher. Investigators invited the boyfriend to come to the police station for an interview on two separate occasions. And both times he agreed to an appointment, only to fail to show both times. He remains a person of interest, but police do not have enough evidence to compel him to speak with them against his will or to obtain a search warrant. And I think this, Gibbs, is one of those things that you often see in unsolved cases that just kind of mystifies you, because on the surface, there seems to be quite a bit of smoke here, right? You've got this guy who plays a game called The Watcher. He doesn't want to talk to police. He has a girlfriend who could have possibly licked the envelopes for him.
Good.
Now, all speculation, but it's one of those things that kind of just gnaws at you, right? In some of these cases where you just don't have any information because nothing came out of it. Number one, because he wasn't willing to talk to police.
And why would he want to?
Exactly. Why would he want to? The Broadduses planned to demolish the home and replace it with two different houses, but the local planning board rejected their application. So in August 2019, the property at 657 Boulevard was sold to Allison and Andrew Carr for $959,000, somewhat below the listed price. In the end, the Broaddus family lost more than $400,000 on this house.
That hurts.
That is not a small amount of money.
But you don't have to worry about the threat to your kids anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people, and maybe they would as well, consider it money well lost, if that's a term, which I don't think it is, given what they went through.
Yeah, well, certainly it was disturbing and life-changing, so.
And what I found interesting was that the new owners received full disclosure on the property, its history, everything that had happened. So, you know, they went through with this sale with their eyes wide open. They also got it at a really good price.
And I think probably not a bad time to buy it, knowing that there was a lot of interest from the police looking at it, eyes are on it. So if there was somebody playing games or something more serious, maybe they pulled away from it and thinking, well, the police are really watching this now, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, I think only time will tell, though.
Right.
Right? If these new owners will ultimately become the new subject of the Watcher's interest. I sure hope not, because I don't think anyone should be subjected to that type of terror. I'll call it that. I'm sure the Broadduses felt that way,
Sure.
that they were being terrorized. Now, I think a lot of our listeners will hear the name of the town, Westfield, New Jersey, and remember it. In 1971, John List murdered his wife and his 3 children, as well as his mother, at their Hillside Avenue mansion in Westfield. List then went on the run for 19 years before being arrested and sent off to prison, where he died in 2008.
Pretty popular case.
Yeah, very well-known case. You and I have not tackled it on TCAT, but I know we will at some point in the future. I think Morph and I did it on criminology.
Yeah, I think you did.
According to NJ.com, in December of 2020, Netflix won a pretty serious bidding battle for the rights to this story, based on the 2018 New York Magazine article about the anonymous entity called the Watcher. So I think it's just a matter of time, Gibbs, before we see some type of limited series called The Watcher on Netflix. There have been reports that Naomi Watts and Bobby Cannavale are attached to star in this show. So I think that could make for a very compelling show.
I think so too.
Because it's a mystery. I don't even know what to make of it. I think, first of all, we have so many holes in the information, right? There's only so much that has been released. We don't even have the entirety of the letters.
No.
So there might be more in those letters that points in a certain direction, but it's something that the police aren't ready to let out.
And I'm sure they got the letters. So it will be interesting to see how they weave that into the storylines.
Well, I can tell you right now, we're not plugging this show, but it would be something that I would watch.
Yeah.
Because I can just see how they could really make this pretty eerie, because it is a very eerie story.
It is.
I don't know if we'll ever know the full extent, the truth about everything. It doesn't stop people from putting out their theories, from, the Broadduses had a hand in it, kind of like an Amityville type situation.
Yeah, good point.
I think to believe that one, first of all, you have to explain the unknown female DNA.
Yes.
And again, they could have paid someone to write the letter or do that, click it, whatever. Why in the world would you want to lose $400,000 unless you were banking? And it's a huge risk that somehow you were going to get a big payday down the road. Now, George and Kathy Lutz got a pretty big payday, from my understanding, after selling their rights to their story, around the Amityville house. But how do you know somebody's going to want to buy it? And you're going to take the chance on, losing out on $400,000?
And if you're doing that, why would you send a letter to a neighboring home? Or does that add more?
See, if you're a conspiracy theorist, then you say that's all part of the master plan.
Yeah.
I'm doing that to kind of prove that, well, it can't be us because another home was targeted. That's the thing with these cases. You can go so many different ways, and you can make an argument and counter an argument back and forth all day long. But that's it, Gibbs, for our case on the unsolved mystery of the Watcher of Westfield. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, this is Haley, calling from Florida. I'm originally from Texas, a small town called Texarkana. I was actually calling to see if you guys could cover a story that happened the summer of 1946. He's called the Phantom Killer. It's also called, the Moonlight Murders. There's a movie about it called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. He actually killed 5 people, and it's very close to home, so I would love to see what you guys have to say about it. Keep your own time ticking. Bye.
She actually reached out to me, an email, after she left that voicemail. And I told her what episodes they were, and she probably has listened to the case.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's in luck because we actually did those. And was it 2 episodes or 3? I can't remember how many we did.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Hello, Mike and Gibby. It's Darby, the former Ohioan, now in Florida. So I was listening, I was going way back, on TCAT Unsolved, episode 40, when at one point Gibby goes, begs to wonder, and you're like, I've never heard of that. That actually is a thing. And 10 points for Gibby for knowing that very Southern saying. My grandfather, who was born and raised in Paintsville, Kentucky, He used to say that all the time. A lot of my family's from southern Kentucky, the hills of Kentucky, and Begs to Wonder is for sure a thing. Mike, I can promise you. So 10 points for Gibby for knowing Begs to Wonder, and love everything y'all do. And been a Patreon for a while now. Always been a big fan of you guys. And keep your head on a swivel and keep your own time ticking. Bye-bye.
Begs to wonder why anybody would ever doubt that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of family in Kentucky too.
You do? And
they say a lot of things. I don't know that makes those sayings legitimate.
Yeah.
But I think I remember after that, I tried to look that up all across the internet. Couldn't find it anywhere.
Did you reach out to my cousins?
No, I didn't. What I did find is begs the question, which is a saying that you hear a lot from a lot of people. Begs to wonder. I just still have never heard that.
I begs to differ.
But, you know, we've got people in Paintsville saying it, and I do love Paintsville. I love Kentucky. You know that. So
Yes.
I'll concede.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. I finally decided to call you guys after listening for a while now. I was calling to make a suggestion. My name is Louisa. I moved here originally to Orlando back in 2007. And when I moved, I remember seeing a bunch of signs all around the city about a girl named Jessica Kesey. I believe that's how it's pronounced. It's Kesse. She was missing, and her picture was all over the place. And to be honest, I was always intrigued. I wanted to know what had happened to her. And according to what my research, it says that she was missing back in 2006. And I don't think she was ever found. And I've never really heard anything about her story. So I really wish you guys could cover it. I love you guys. I cannot choose. I'm not either Team Gibby or Team Mike. I'm Team T-Cats. You guys are awesome. I love what you do with the podcast. Thank you so much, you guys. You were there for me throughout the whole COVID-19 back in 2020. So thank you for that. And keep your own time ticking. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and you're in luck as well, because we actually covered that case on this podcast. It's episode 104.
There you go.
It's been a while.
Hopefully we make you proud.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Braylon from Pensacola, Florida. I have fallen in love with your podcast, and I want to tell you thank you so much for keeping me entertained and awake whenever I am driving home these long hours from the beach. They really get to me. And I also wanted to leave a suggestion. The Billings case, the murders of Bertie and Melanie Billings, are a couple ones that I wanted to listen to. Also, I wanted to see if y'all could look into the missing persons of Danielle Bell for Unsolved. She was in my class. She ended up going missing when she was 14 years old. So I want to say it was like 2002 whenever she went missing, maybe 2001. But I thought it'd be an interesting case. So if it's something that y'all would be willing to look into, I'd greatly appreciate it. Once again, love you so much, and I am actually Team Mike Squares. Y'all are both amazing. You make me laugh all the time, and I appreciate you. So, y'all have a good one, and keep your own time ticking.
You're more square than I am.
You're the squarest.
You're squarier.
So we appreciate the voicemail, and obviously we will definitely look into those cases. We look into a lot. You know, sometimes you just can't find enough. I think we've said it before, but
Yeah.
you do the research and you just figure out that there's just not enough to do a full episode. And sometimes I think it's sad because everyone deserves to have their story told, especially when you're talking about like some of these unsolved cases that they're moving and you want to tell them, but you just the information is just not there.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. That is it.
That's it.
For another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
And Gibby.
Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Work takes up most of your time. That's why you should use Stamps.com to save time with your mailing and shipping. Stamps.com will simplify your postage needs and add valuable time back into your workday, so you have flexibility to focus on more important things. Stamps.com can handle your mailing and shipping needs with rates up to 88% off UPS and USPS. Send invoices, checks, certified mail, packages, and anything else you need to keep your business running with Stamps.com. If you sell online, connecting with every major marketplace and shopping cart is easy. Plus, you can schedule package pickups through their dashboard and automatically see your cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers with Stamps.com's Rate Advisor. Add more flexibility to your workday with Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com/program to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/program.